As we come on the air tonight, tensions high in Minnesota as the DOJ is now reportedly investigating state and local leaders for alleged obstruction of law enforcement as protests persist.
Do you dare to believe that the person behind those massive shipments of illegal goods is actually the one holding the scales of justice? At 3:14 in the morning, in a solemn judge's office, federal agents not only discovered 34 bricks of cocaine, but also uncovered a shocking prison break plan aimed straight at Alcatraz to rescue a notorious drug kingpin. This is not a movie script, but the file on a phantom who has manipulated the system for an entire decade. What is that horrifying truth? Let's find out right now. There are stories when retold, we are forced to wonder whether the boundary between good and evil is really as clear as we always imagined or not. Recently, sources from Washington show a decisive shift. President Trump is said to have been and is taking unprecedented strong steps to protect the border, with a declaration to continue the unrelenting war against the cartel gangs ravaging this entire country. The goal seems very clear: deport or imprison them permanently thanks to the efforts of prosecutors nationwide. But behind those bold declarations, there are dark corners that few people anticipate. The clock struck exactly 3:14 in the morning. Minneapolis at this moment seemed to be sinking into an absolute silence of the harsh winter. The streets were deserted, blocked by thick layers of ice. An annex building of the courthouse stood towering in the darkness, except for the faint light spilling out from the third-floor office of a judge. There were no sirens blaring, no commotion. Unmarked federal vehicles were said to have approached from 3 directions, car doors opening as quietly as possible. ICE and DEA agents moved extremely fast, their breaths turning into white smoke in the bone-chilling cold. In just 92 seconds, the hallway was reportedly fully secured. A reinforced door was broken down. The agents burst into the room. This was not some abandoned warehouse or a dark alley. According to on-scene reports, this was the working office of a sitting judge. Beneath a heavy conference table, the agents seemed to have noticed fresh scratch marks on the floor. The floor shifted. A carefully concealed, steel-lined compartment was pried open. And what they found inside was truly shocking. 34 bricks believed to be high-quality cocaine, each stamped with the unique insignia of the Sinaloa cartel, estimated to be worth more than $38 million. But it didn't stop there. Near the window, a satellite phone was actively flashing with encrypted messages being updated in real time. And then the final shock hit. Above the ceiling panels, investigators were said to have discovered a series of foreign bank documents, gold bars, and shipping manifests labeled as humanitarian aid. As dawn broke, an undeniable truth seemed to emerge. Justice wasn't just violated in a single night. It appeared to have been compromised for many years. If a sitting judge could hide a massive quantity of contraband right in his own office, then how many verdicts had been distorted without anyone knowing? You see, all those friends and colleagues out there, the ones working tirelessly to prosecute violent criminals, to rid the streets of drugs and gangs, seem to be facing an invisible enemy. For more than a decade, Hassan Sheikh Aden has been presented as a real-life fairy tale. Born into extreme poverty in Somalia, he arrived in the United States with just one suitcase and a scholarship. By his early 30s, he had graduated from law school with honors, and at the age of 40, he donned the judge's robe. But behind that glamorous image, something far darker was taking shape. Financial analysts later discovered that more than $310 million had flowed through organizations linked to his name. On paper, this money funded child care centers, community cultural houses, and religious charitable organizations. But in reality, according to investigators' suspicions, many of these organizations existed just long enough to transfer cash, then dissolved and reappeared under new names within a matter of months. Court records have revealed a disturbing pattern. Over the course of 7 years, 42 high-risk drug cases were reportedly continuously assigned to his courtroom. Charges were reduced. Evidence disappeared. Sentences collapsed. No alarm bells were ever sounded. The system seemed to have placed complete trust in him. While he spoke publicly about fairness and equality, shipments of cocaine were allegedly allowed to cross the border under the guise of humanitarian aid. The containers labeled as emergency relief carried contraband worth tens of millions of dollars, slipping through inspections with timing so perfect it was suspicious. Investigators later confirmed the suspicion that he had access to internal police meetings and sealed search warrants. Raids were anticipated in advance. Routes were changed. Trucks vanished into the night. At this point, I want you all to reflect for a moment. Is this simply pure greed, or is it a long-term plan for control? At 5:02 in the morning, the nature of the operation had completely changed. What began as a drug seizure had turned into a far more dangerous discovery. In the back corner of the judge's office, behind a wall lined with neatly labeled legal file folders, an agent noticed an uneven gap in the wooden paneling. When pressed, the panel slid aside, revealing a professionally concealed steel-lined compartment. Inside was a laptop. No brand, no serial number. The casing was reinforced and shockproof. When an agent touched it, the surface was still warm. It appeared to have been used just moments earlier. Federal cybersecurity experts arrived within minutes. There was no prolonged cyber attack, no failed attempts. The system unlocked almost instantly, as if its owner had anticipated it would be discovered. What appeared on the screen left the entire room stunned. This was not a record of past crimes. According to leaked sources, these were plans for a future operation, detailed, organized, and fully funded. The files outlined a coordinated rescue mission designed by senior members of the Sinaloa cartel. With the judicial protection provided by Hassan Sheikh Aden, the schedule outlined the movement of personnel and transportation routes weeks in advance. The financial ledger tracked more than $180 million allocated through offshore accounts, gold transfers, and cash corridors scheduled over the next 9 months. One folder bore a single word: prison break. Satellite images flooded the screen, water depth charts, tidal windows, rock density scans. The target location was unmistakable: the federal penitentiary Alcatraz, an island prison surrounded by freezing waters and sheer cliffs. The plan was divided into 3 phases. Phase 1. A submarine would approach underwater during a narrow tidal window, evading sonar and surface patrols. Phase 2. A precisely drilled tunnel would breach the rock beneath a reinforced cell calculated to avoid vibration sensors. Phase 3. A timed evacuation, allowing less than 9 minutes before the alarm triggered a full lockdown. The target was never named, but according to expert analysis, every diagram pointed to a single prisoner: El Chapo. By 5:29 in the morning, command centers across multiple agencies had been placed on high alert. Phones rang non-stop. The operation was no longer about drugs or money. It was about stopping an escape that, if successful, would rewrite criminal history. Just imagine how catastrophic the consequences would be if this plan actually succeeded. By 6:40 in the morning, the threat was no longer theoretical. In a secure command room, analysts projected the target onto the wall: the federal penitentiary Alcatraz. Freezing water, powerful currents, sheer cliffs, a place designed to crush any escape attempt, and now the focal point of a rescue operation. Weather data scrolled beside the sonar feed. The tidal window was narrowing by the minute. Every delay increased the risk. A joint task force was activated immediately. More than 120 agents from the FBI, DEA, and other units mobilized in less than 18 minutes. Air units took off. Maritime patrols accelerated. Underwater sensors went active. At 6:57 in the morning, sonar detected movement beneath the surface. Slowly, cautiously, metal scraped against the current. The silhouette of a submarine emerged, hugging the seabed, moving in silence. The room fell deathly quiet. Orders were issued. Surface vessels cut their engines to reduce noise. Drones flew low, their cameras slicing through the fog. As the submarine crossed the boundary line, flares erupted across the water's surface, bathing the bay in blinding white light. The response was immediate. A hatch popped open, shadowy figures rose up, weapons raised high. The first explosions cracked over the water. A helicopter roared in, its rotors slicing the air as agents rappelled down the sheer cliffs. Stun grenades detonated, turning the darkness into blinding daylight. On the rocky shore, armed guards tried to retreat toward a concealed access point. They didn't get far. A deafening crash echoed off the stone. Orders were shouted, boots pounded on wet concrete. The confrontation unfolded fast and ferocious, lasting less than 9 minutes. But every second stretched out like an eternity. When it was over, many suspects lay groaning on the ground, weapons scattered, hands bound. Then came the real discovery. Beneath a camouflaged maintenance shed, agents uncovered a newly cut steel-reinforced shaft. The tunnel sloped downward at a precise angle, its alignment matching the diagrams recovered just hours earlier. Drilling equipment was still warm. Oxygen lines ran deep into the rock. Explosive devices had been neutralized. Power had been cut. The submarine was seized intact. If a judge could hide drugs right in his own office, does justice truly exist, or is it merely a game of power? Its cargo hold was filled with tools, maps, and timing devices synchronized to a single clock. The countdown timer had been stopped with less than 22 minutes remaining. As dawn broke over the bay, the island stood silent once more. The alarm sirens faded away. Helicopters departed. The water closed over the disturbance as if nothing had ever happened, but those on the ground knew the truth. A prison had come perilously close to collapse. A cartel had nearly rewritten the rules. And if the assault had begun just 1 hour later, history might have recorded a very different morning. At 7:08 in the morning, the operation expanded. 7 kilometers to the west of the island, radar locked onto a vessel holding position just outside the civilian traffic lane. It was large, low to the water, and eerily silent. No broadcast ID, no clear markings. The layout of its deck told the story even before intelligence could confirm it. This was the final escape platform. Thermal feeds revealed movement on deck. Nearly 60 armed mercenaries were spread out in overlapping security arcs. They wore mixed tactical gear, helmets, night vision goggles still attached even though daylight had broken. At the stern was a cleared, steel-reinforced platform, a makeshift helicopter landing pad. Fuel lines had been pre-primed. It was waiting for a signal. The orders came swiftly. Fast response vessels surged forward while air assets redirected. Drones dropped low, mapping the rotating guard positions. The moment the ship detected the pursuit, its engines roared to full power. Mercenaries scrambled into defensive positions. The helicopter crew sprinted toward their aircraft. Warning shots sliced across the water. Automatic fire stitched the waves as the vessel tried to break through the encirclement. Smoke blanketed the air. A thunderous helicopter roared overhead. Its rotors shook the ship as agents rappelled down. Stun grenades detonated across the deck. The crowd scattered, weapons clattered to the deck, orders shouted in 3 languages. The fight narrowed to close quarters. Boots pounded on steel, bodies slammed against railings. Some mercenaries bolted toward the helicopter. Their retreat was cut off. Within minutes, the deck was secured. Engines were shut down. The aircraft was disabled before it could lift off. The survivors were forced face down on the floor, wrists bound, their final escape route sealed shut. Below deck, the evidence confirmed everything. Escape gear, medical kits, fuel reserves, timings precise to the minute. An encrypted radio synchronized to the same master clock recovered from the island. This ship was not a backup plan. It was the final step. By 7:24 in the morning, the rescue plan had completely collapsed. There was no tunnel, no submarine, no airlift. The cartel had reached the very edge of success and tumbled back into the water. The island stood intact. History remained unchanged, and an escape that should never have been possible ended just 7 kilometers from freedom. The documents recovered from the laptop never mentioned his name. They didn't need to. Every analyst recognized the signature instantly. The timelines, tunnel tolerances, and backup layers. This operation was designed for one man alone, El Chapo. For more than 2 decades, his influence has stretched across continents. Even behind reinforced walls, his network moves faster than any contraband. Intelligence estimates show that groups still loyal to him control more than 60% of the cocaine routes into North America, generating more than $12 billion a year. Getting him out of custody, even for a short time, would not be merely symbolic. it would be an earthquake. The plan reveals ruthless precision. The rescue window is calculated at 8 minutes and 40 seconds, the maximum time before the tiered alarms trigger full lockdown. The tunnel route avoids all known vibration sensors. The submersible carries sufficient power for 2 round trips, accounting for the possibility of failure. Backup routes are mapped for multiple weather scenarios. Losses are predicted, calculated, and budgeted. This is not desperation. This is confidence. Analysts found the answer in the financial forecasts. Rival factions are preparing to expand into the main corridors. Without centralized power, profits will collapse. Control will erode. The rescue is not about freedom. It is about reasserting command. If successful, the effects will be immediate. The transporters will realign. The enforcers will regroup. The compromised officials will fall back into line. Intelligence predicts cross-border drug volume will surge 40% within 6 months, accompanied by escalating violence at the transit hubs. Hassan Sheikh Aden's role is unmistakable. He is not some peripheral facilitator. He is the guarantor. His access to sealed orders, inspection schedules, and interagency movements provided the certainty the cartel demanded. The plan did not depend solely on the method of escape, but on who would look the other way. A memo summarized it coldly. The silence of justice ensures success at sea. In the underworld, Hassan Sheikh Aden was never called Your Honor. He was known by one name alone, John Wick. That wasn't admiration, it was a warning. Investigators uncovered his role by reconstructing years of silent decisions that never triggered any alarms. He didn't transport drugs, he didn't touch the money, he redirected outcomes. Court schedules were shifted. Arrest warrants were stalled. Evidence arrived late or incomplete. On paper, nothing appeared illegal. In reality, this pattern was surgical. Records show that Aden had access to restricted law enforcement briefings reserved only for senior prosecutors. He knew which units were assigned where when wiretaps were about to expire, and which judges could be pressured to delay hearings by a few hours or days. That window was enough. Raids failed by minutes. Trucks were rerouted at the final intersections. Storage sites stood empty overnight. Shell companies dissolved just before subpoenas arrived. Internal reviews blamed miscommunication. No one suspected the judge, but the numbers told a very different story. For more than 9 years, at least 67 major drug defendants had passed through his courtroom. 49 cases collapsed before trial. Evidence was excluded. Orders were ruled defective. Informants recanted their statements. Each ruling adhered word for word to the letter of the law. Yet together they dismantled entire investigations. He didn't bribe criminals. He neutralized the very system pursuing them. Subsequent phone data revealed 5 separate devices, each assigned to a single channel. Legal contacts, financial intermediaries, law enforcement leaks, and international coordination. The 5th device, never powered on inside the United States, was reserved for emergencies. It had been activated 3 times. Each activation corresponded precisely to a shipment that vanished without seizure. Once the arrests were secured and the immediate threat neutralized, investigators turned to the most critical question: how was the money moving? The answer proved even more disturbing than the drugs themselves. The financial flows did not merely pass through offshore accounts. They ran through children, through communities, through organizations that people trusted without question. Over a period of 6 years, more than $310 million was allegedly laundered through a network of child care centers, community organizations, and religious funds tied to the legal and personal circle of Hassan Sheikh Aden. On paper, these entities served noble purposes: early childhood education, after-school programs, food distribution, and youth counseling. In reality, many existed solely as financial conduits. Auditors discovered that 18 child care facilities received public funding, yet their reported enrollment numbers fluctuated overnight by hundreds of children. Some locations listed staff members who never existed. Others submitted invoices for meals that were never delivered. One center billed for 1,200 meals per day, despite having the physical capacity for fewer than 90 children. Community centers showed a similar pattern. Renovation grants were approved, sometimes exceeding $4.2 million per site, but inspections were routinely skipped. Construction never began. The money moved back out within hours, broken into smaller transfers, routed through shell vendors, then converted into cash, gold, or foreign currency. Religious charities provided the final layer of cover. Donations flowed in quietly, often just below the reporting threshold. The money left just as silently, labeled as foreign aid. By 11:48 a.m., the federal command had authorized a full intercept phase. Within 72 hours, coordinated teams executed arrest warrants at 29 locations across 3 states. Warehouses, community offices, financial intermediaries, private residences. Every move was timed down to the minute. No advance warning, no staggered arrests. The objective was simple: deny reaction time. The results stunned even veteran agents. A modified submersible was seized intact less than 1.4 kilometers from the launch point. Its system was synchronized with the same master clock as the tunnel equipment recovered earlier. The drilling rig, oxygen lines, reinforced cutting heads, everything necessary to breach solid rock had been staged. By the end of the third day, 86 primary suspects were in custody, including logistics coordinators, financial couriers, legal fixers, and 2 former enforcement officials who had crossed the line years earlier. Authorities seized $52 million in cash, gold reserves, encryption devices, and shipping manifests mapping routes that had never been recorded in any database. The most expensive lesson from this event is vigilance in the face of perfect covers. We tend to place absolute trust in symbols of authority and compassion, but the truth is that darkness can exploit precisely those lofty values to conceal itself. Never stop questioning and monitoring, because justice does not reside only in courtroom verdicts, but in the integrity of every individual within the system. Protect trust through understanding rather than blind surrender. The plan was perfect down to the last detail, and a highly respected judge turned out to be the final puppet master. The Hassan Sheikh Aden case is closed, but it leaves one haunting question. How many other ghosts are still hiding behind the robes of justice that we have yet to discover? If the task force had arrived just 1 hour later, the history of crime might have been rewritten in the worst possible way. Do you think this is an instance of individual corruption or a deadly flaw in the entire system? Share your thoughts in the comments below, and don't forget to subscribe to the channel so we can continue decoding the next classified files together.